Commander Elira had studied humans for years, yet she had never truly met one face to face. Everything she knew came from reports, historical records, and whispered warnings shared among the Velithian coalition. Humans were described as unpredictable, emotional, stubborn beyond reason, and capable of both great kindness and terrible destruction. To her people, who valued control and balance above all else, such traits felt dangerous. The diplomatic vessel glided silently through the dark between stars, its engines humming with steady precision. Elira stood near the observation window, watching distant nebulae shimmer like soft clouds of color. This mission was meant to strengthen alliances among outer systems, a simple exchange of knowledge and trust. Humans had recently gained more influence in galactic politics, and the coalition wanted to understand them better, though many still viewed them with suspicion. She had volunteered for this mission not because she trusted humans, but because she believed understanding one's potential enemies was necessary. Knowledge created safety. Distance created control. Those principles guided her life. The first warning came as a faint tremor through the ship's structure. It was subtle enough that most passengers might not notice, but Elira felt it immediately. Her species had evolved with heightened awareness of vibration, allowing her to sense disturbances before alarms activated. A second later, red lights flooded the corridor and a mechanical voice announced a breach. Pirates. The word moved through the crew like a silent storm. Outer Rim pirates were ruthless, targeting diplomatic ships because they carried valuable technology and often avoided heavy weaponry. Elira rushed toward the command deck, maintaining composure even as the ship shook violently. Through reinforced windows, she saw flashes of energy weapons striking their shields. Officers shouted reports, and damage indicators flickered across screens. They were outmatched. The pirates disabled the engines within minutes. Explosions echoed through the vessel as emergency systems struggled to respond. The captain ordered evacuation, but chaos spread faster than instructions. Escape pods launched blindly into space, many likely damaged by incoming fire. Elira secured herself in a pod with several survivors, barely noticing who joined her as the automated system launched them away from the dying ship. The last thing she saw was the diplomatic vessel breaking apart in silence, its lights fading like a dying star. The escape pod entered a nearby planet's atmosphere, shaking violently as heat flared against the hull. Elira focused on controlled breathing, repeating mental exercises to prevent fear from taking hold. Fear clouded judgment. Logic ensured survival. The landing was rough. Sand blasted against the pod as it crashed across a barren desert plain before finally stopping. Silence followed. When the hatch opened, harsh sunlight flooded inside. The air was dry but breathable. Elira stepped onto the sand carefully, scanning the horizon. The landscape stretched endlessly, broken only by distant rock formations and scattered wreckage from other pods. She turned toward the other survivor emerging behind her, a human. He removed his helmet and ran a hand through messy dark hair, squinting against the sun. Despite the crash, he looked oddly relaxed, as though he had just finished a long journey rather than barely surviving a disaster. "Well," he said with a small smile, "could have been worse." Elira felt immediate discomfort. His tone carried humor, something she found deeply inappropriate given their situation. She studied him carefully, noting the way he moved, loose, confident, unguarded. "I am Commander Elira," she said formally. "Rowan," he replied, "salvage pilot." The word salvage made her uneasy. Humans often worked in dangerous environments, retrieving lost technology from unstable zones. That required risk-taking behavior, another reason her people distrusted them. Rowan looked around quickly, assessing the surroundings with surprising efficiency. He checked the pod systems, gathered supplies, and began organizing items without waiting for orders. "You should conserve energy," she said, observing his fast movements. He shrugged. "Energy's useless if we don't have water." She paused, practical thinking, not reckless. Still, she kept emotional distance. They spent the first hours searching nearby wreckage for supplies. Rowan moved with determination, occasionally cracking small jokes that made no sense to her. At first, she assumed he used humor to avoid fear, but she later realized it seemed to give others strength. They found more survivors, injured diplomats, frightened crew members, and individuals from different species who struggled to communicate. Rowan helped everyone equally, ignoring status or rank. That surprised her. When a heavy crate collapsed near an injured survivor, Rowan lifted it despite obvious strain, refusing assistance until the person was safe. Humans, she knew, had strong physical endurance, but his willingness to risk injury felt unnecessary. Night fell quickly. Temperatures dropped sharply, and Rowan built a shelter from broken hull fragments. Elira watched silently as he worked, noticing how others naturally followed his suggestions without him demanding authority. Her instincts warned her to remain cautious. Humans could be charismatic, charisma could be manipulative. On the second day, they discovered pirate scouts searching the wreckage. Panic spread among the survivors. Elira suggested hiding quietly until rescue arrived, but Rowan disagreed. "They'll find us if we stay still," he said calmly. "We need to move, stay unpredictable." His plan sounded chaotic, yet it worked. They relocated to rocky terrain where they could hide more easily. As hours passed, Elira began observing patterns that challenged her assumptions. Rowan gave away his own rations to injured survivors. He listened carefully when others spoke, even when communication was difficult. When someone broke down in fear, he stayed beside them without impatience. None of it aligned with the image she had formed of humans as self-centered risk-seekers. Late that evening, pirate scouts discovered their location. Energy blasts struck nearby rocks, sending debris flying. Rowan immediately moved between attackers and the survivors, guiding everyone toward safer ground. During the chaos, he was struck by a blast that threw him against the sand. Elira froze for a moment. Logic calculated options quickly. Carrying an injured human would slow her escape chances significantly. He groaned, trying to stand but failing. "Leave me," he muttered. "Get them out." The words unsettled her. Humans were supposed to prioritize personal survival. She looked at the fleeing survivors, then back at him. Something unfamiliar stirred within her, a sense that abandoning him would be wrong beyond logical reasoning. Without fully understanding why, she lifted him with careful strength and guided him forward. They escaped into narrow canyon paths where pirate vehicles could not easily follow. Only when they stopped did she realize her breathing was uneven. Rowan looked at her with quiet surprise. "You didn't have to do that." "I made a strategic decision," she replied quickly, though she knew that explanation felt incomplete. He smiled faintly before losing consciousness. As she treated his injuries with medical supplies from the pod, Elira felt the foundation of her beliefs shifting. The human she had been taught to fear had risked everything for strangers, and now she found herself protecting him. The desert night stretched endlessly around them, silent and uncertain. For the first time since the crash, she wondered if the greatest danger was not trusting humans, but failing to understand them. And somewhere deep within, the human she once dreaded had begun to become someone she could not abandon. The desert morning arrived slowly, bringing pale golden light across endless sand and stone. Commander Elira had not slept much. She sat beside Rowan, watching his breathing carefully as the heat of the new day began to rise. His injuries were serious but stable. The medical scanner showed internal bruising and energy burns, yet his vital signs remained strong. That alone surprised her. Her people required controlled rest and advanced treatment after trauma, yet Rowan's body fought stubbornly to recover even without proper facilities. Humans truly were different. Around them, the survivors moved quietly, conserving energy. Fear lingered like an invisible weight. They had escaped the pirate scouts for now, but everyone knew the danger was far from over. When Rowan finally opened his eyes, his first reaction was not pain or panic. Instead, he looked around to check if everyone else was safe. "Did we lose anyone?" he asked weakly. "No," Elira answered. He smiled faintly, relief clear in his expression. That reaction puzzled her again. Most leaders she knew focused on their own survival first. Rowan seemed driven by something else entirely. "You should rest," she said. He shook his head slightly. "Rest later. We need a plan." She almost objected, but then realized she was beginning to expect such behavior from him. His stubborn determination had already changed how others behaved. The survivors listened when he spoke, not because he demanded authority, but because he carried quiet confidence. They discussed their situation. Rescue might come eventually, but without a signal beacon, their location remained unknown. Supplies were limited, and pirate patrols were likely searching for survivors. Rowan suggested moving toward a distant ridge where debris scans indicated a large energy source beneath the surface. Elira analyzed the data and agreed there was something unusual there, possibly ancient technology or a dormant structure. The journey would be dangerous, but staying still meant certain discovery. They began traveling during cooler hours, using rocky formations for cover. Elira watched Rowan closely. Despite injuries, he helped carry equipment and encouraged others with calm words. Occasionally, he joked softly, easing tension among frightened survivors. At first, she thought humor during crisis was illogical, but she began to understand its purpose. It gave hope. During a short rest, she asked him directly, "Why do humans maintain optimism when survival chances are uncertain?" He thought for a moment. "Because giving up guarantees failure. Hope doesn't always save you, but it gives you a reason to try." The simplicity of his answer stayed with her. They reached the ridge after several exhausting hours. Hidden among jagged rocks was a massive entrance carved into the stone, partially buried by sand. Strange symbols covered the surface, belonging to an ancient civilization long extinct. Inside, the air felt cooler. Faint lights flickered along metallic walls, as if responding to their presence. Elira's training allowed her to recognize advanced technology far beyond current standards. A central chamber contained a towering device, a beacon capable of transmitting signals across vast distances. Excitement spread among the survivors. If activated, rescue forces could locate them quickly. However, the system required two types of input: precise technical calibration and unpredictable adaptive adjustments. Elira could manage the precision easily, but some systems reacted strangely, requiring creative solutions. Rowan stepped forward. "Looks like it doesn't follow normal rules," he said. Together they worked, combining her structured logic with his improvisation. At times, their approaches clashed. She preferred detailed analysis before action. He often tested possibilities quickly. Yet slowly, the beacon began to awaken. As they worked, pirate signals appeared on the scanner. The enemy had tracked energy fluctuations and was approaching fast. Fear spread again, but Rowan remained calm. He organized defensive positions and assigned roles based on each survivor's abilities. Watching him, Elira realized he did not lead through authority but through trust. When pirate raiders entered the outer chamber, tension exploded into action. Rowan distracted them, drawing attention away from the beacon controls while others moved to safety. He risked capture deliberately, allowing Elira enough time to finish critical calibration. She hesitated, torn between logic and emotion. Saving him might endanger everyone. But leaving him felt impossible. Using nearby equipment, she triggered a controlled energy surge that disabled pirate weapons temporarily. The survivors regrouped, escaping deeper into the structure. Rowan rejoined them later, bruised but alive, laughing softly despite the danger. "You see," he said, "teamwork." She found herself almost smiling. As activation neared completion, the beacon hummed louder, sending powerful pulses into the sky. Rescue signals now traveled across space, but pirates gathered outside, preparing a final assault before help could arrive. The survivors looked to Rowan and Elira together. Without speaking, they understood they had become partners. Elira felt something shift within her, not just trust, but respect. Humans were not chaotic forces lacking logic. They simply followed a different kind of logic, one shaped by emotion, connection, and refusal to abandon others. For the first time in her life, she allowed herself to feel uncertainty without fear. And beside her stood the human she once dreaded, now the one person she trusted most to face whatever came next. The low hum of the ancient beacon filled the chamber like a steady heartbeat. Commander Elira stood beside the control console, watching energy readings climb slowly toward full activation. Each pulse that left the tower traveled farther into space, carrying their call for rescue. It was working, but time moved painfully slow. Outside, pirate ships gathered across the sky like dark shadows against the burning light of the desert sun. Their presence pressed down on the survivors like a growing storm. Everyone understood that rescue might arrive, but only if they survived long enough. Rowan leaned against a metal wall, breathing carefully. His injuries had not fully healed, yet he refused to rest. His eyes scanned the room, always searching for ways to help, ways to protect. Elira observed him quietly. When she first met him, she had expected chaos and recklessness. Instead, she had found patience, determination, and a strange, quiet strength that held the group together. "They will attack soon," she said calmly. "Yeah," Rowan replied. So we get ready. His answer sounded simple, almost casual, but she could see tension behind his expression. Humans felt fear deeply. She had learned that now. The difference was that they did not allow fear to stop them. The survivors gathered near the entrance chamber. Some held improvised tools, others monitored scanners. No one here was trained for combat, yet they stood together. Rowan spoke to them with steady confidence. He did not promise victory. He only promised that they would not face danger alone. That promise changed something in the room. Fear became quieter. Determination grew stronger. Elira felt an unfamiliar warmth in her chest. For most of her life, leadership meant maintaining control and distance. Rowan's leadership was different. He connected with people, made them feel seen, and gave them courage through shared purpose. The first explosion echoed through the outer corridor. Dust fell from the ceiling as pirate forces breached the entrance. Energy blasts flashed against stone walls, lighting the chamber with violent bursts. Rowan moved forward immediately, guiding survivors into defensive positions behind broken structures. He adjusted strategies quickly, using terrain to slow enemy movement. Elira joined him, analyzing patterns and predicting pirate movements. Together they formed a balance, his adaptability and her precision creating something stronger than either approach alone. Pirates pushed forward, shouting in harsh voices. Their armor reflected dim light as they advanced. Elira felt the old instinct to retreat, to preserve life through avoidance. But then she saw Rowan standing firm, refusing to step back while others depended on him. She stayed. The battle was chaotic but focused. Survivors worked together, blocking pathways and redirecting enemies into narrow spaces where numbers mattered less. Rowan encouraged everyone constantly, his voice steady even as danger surrounded them. At one moment, a young survivor froze in fear, unable to move as pirates approached. Without hesitation, Rowan crossed open ground to pull them to safety, taking a blast against his shoulder armor that knocked him back. Elira's heart tightened at the sight. She rushed forward, helping him stand. "You risk yourself unnecessarily," she said. He shook his head. "Not unnecessary, necessary," she understood now. Humans did not calculate worth only through survival probability. They valued connection, loyalty, and compassion even when logic suggested otherwise. The beacon's energy reached 70%. More time was needed. Pirates regrouped for a stronger attack, bringing heavy equipment capable of breaking their defenses. The situation turned desperate. Rowan gathered everyone quickly. "We hold here," he said, "not because we're stronger, but because we stand together." His words were simple, but they carried deep power. As the next wave arrived, Elira stepped forward beside him without hesitation. She felt fear, but she also felt something greater, trust. Together, they executed a final plan. She used her strategic knowledge to manipulate the ancient systems, opening and closing barriers to confuse enemies. Rowan led defensive movements, guiding survivors with calm authority. Slowly, painfully, they held their ground. The beacon reached 90%. Outside, a new signal appeared on scanners, approaching ships, fast and powerful. Rescue. Hope surged through the chamber. Pirates realized it too and launched a desperate final charge. Rowan moved to the front line again, refusing to retreat even when escape paths opened. Elira watched him, understanding fully now why humans were both feared and admired across the galaxy. They did not abandon others, even when logic told them to save themselves. The final moments felt endless. Energy blasts filled the air, and dust turned the chamber into a haze of light and shadow. Then everything changed. Bright beams cut through the sky as rescue forces arrived, overwhelming pirate ships with precise strikes. The attackers retreated quickly, abandoning the fight. Silence followed, broken only by heavy breathing and distant echoes. The survivors slowly realized they were safe. Relief spread through the group like warm sunlight after a long night. Some laughed softly, others cried quietly. Rowan sat down heavily, exhaustion finally catching him. Elira stood beside him, watching rescue teams enter the structure. For the first time since the crash, she allowed herself to relax completely. "You were right," she said quietly. "About what?" he asked. "Humans." He smiled faintly. "We're complicated." "Yes," she agreed, "but stronger than I understood." Later, aboard the rescue vessel, she faced coalition officials who questioned the incident. Many still spoke of humans with suspicion. Elira surprised even herself when she spoke firmly in their defense. She described human courage, cooperation, and the strength that came from emotional connection. She realized that the human she once dreaded had changed her perspective forever. As the stars stretched across the viewing window, she stood beside Rowan again, no longer seeing him as an unpredictable outsider, but as someone she trusted deeply. The galaxy would continue to fear humans for their unpredictability, but she now knew the truth. Humanity's greatest strength was not their power or technology. It was their refusal to stand alone, and their ability to make others feel they were never alone either. And because of that, the human she once feared had become the one person she knew she could always rely on.